Namaste. The teacher, student, and me acknowledge with an honor the students to grade in use. So we are back to the etymology online dictionary's referencing of the origin of the words as we've been using them in multiple types of languages. Bach, would you excuse the field of vision, please? Could you move
More
over,
spirit
please?
energy.
Thank you. So the word slave, right? It's a noun. The slave noun, right? It describes a person, place, or thing. Comes from the late 13th century. In quotes, person who is the chattel or property of another, in quotes. From Old French esclave, 13th century. From medieval Latin slavus, slave. Source also of Italian schiavo, French esclave, Spanish esclavo. Originally
More
Slav,
spirit energy.
Slav. So used in the secondary.
I just want to see what's going on in here and be able to read that maybe not be able to hear.
The oldest written history of the Slavs can be shortly summarized. Myriads of slave hunts,
but can feel, so that's what's always important. Vibration, energy. Immortal spirit energy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, immortal spirit energy.
Y'all bodies is blocking y'all bodies is not glass. Move it.
Move it, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.
Immortal spirit energy.
Move it. Thank you. Love you guys. Thanks for photo bombing. We love you.
Audience.
Okay?
Yes, audience
Guys,
participants.
I want to come over here and not just interfere with the photo. Okay? Love y'all. So, the oldest written history of the Slavs can be shortly summarized. Myriads of slave hunts and the enthrallment of entire peoples. The Slav was the most prized of human goods, with increased strength outside their marshy land of origin. Hardened to the utmost against all privation, industrious, content with little, good-humored, and cheerful. They filled the slave markets of Europe, Asia, and Africa. It must be remembered that for every Slavonic slave who reached their destination, at least 10 succumbed to the inhumane treatment during transport into the heat of the climate. Indeed, Ibrahim, 10th century,
Ibrahim.
itself, in all probability, a slave dealer, says, in quotes, and the Slavs cannot travel to Lombardy on account of the heat, which is fatal to them, in quotes. Hence their high price. I'm going to bring that back to you, okay? So, just in case you didn't hear it correctly, I'm going to repeat this paragraph. The oldest written history of the Slavs can be shortly summarized. Myriads of slave hunts and the enthrallment of entire peoples. The Slav was the most prized of human goods.
The best hunting is done with zombies.
We are sure that there were animal bodies over there with the Slavs as well. So, while they're just trying to suggest entire peoples, those immortal spirit energies and animal bodies are just as relevant.
Livestock considered.
The Slav was the most
humans
prized
and animals. They consider livestock.
Human and livestock, right? Human and animal.
Which they consider themselves just the same.
With increased
so live or dead stock, right?
Marshy land of origin, hardened to the utmost against all privation, industrious, content with little, good-humored, and cheerful. They filled the slave markets of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Come on, we're sure North America, South America, Central America, all of the other
Remember,
lands,
the lands was all together, easy to roam.
It must be remembered that for every Slavonic slave who reached their destination, at least 10 succumbed to the atrocious treatments during transport and to the heat of the climate. Of being bamboozled into participating in a weak-ass sadistic serial killer encouraging slave mentality hypocrite society.
That's weak.
So,
since they had to disguise themselves with their trickery.
Which is spelled the same fashion as in Judean religion. Excuse us, Brock. Excuse us, our love. Thank you. Thank you. Immortal Spirit and Gene. It's, spelled in that person's name. Itself, in all probability, a slave dealer, says, in quotes, and the Slavs cannot travel to Lombardy on account of the heat which is fatal to them. Hence their high price. The Arabian geographer of the 9th century tells us how the Magyars in the Pontus Steppe dominated all the Slavs dwelling near them. The Magyars made raids upon the Slavs and took their prisoners along the coast to Kirk, where the Byzantines came to meet them and gave Greek brocades and such wares in exchange for the prisoners. That is from the Cambridge Medieval History, Volume 2, 1913. Meaning this is in quotes, meaning one who has lost the power of resistance to some habit or vice, end quotes. It's from 1550s. Applied to devices from 1904, especially those which are controlled by others. Compare slave jib in sailing. Similarly of locomotives, flash bulbs, amplifiers. In parentheses, period. Slave driver is attested from 1807. Extended sense of cruel or exacting taskmaster is by 1854. Slave state in the U.S. history, it's from 1812. Slave trade is attested from 1734. However, we know that this goes back to the late 13th century from just this origin of the word slave. It is the absurd to bring back a runaway slave. If a slave can survive without a master, is it not awful to admit that the master cannot live without the slave? Question. This is from Diogenes, Fragment 6, Translation, Guy Davenport. Old English, Britain, also began to be used in the sense of serf and slave. And that's from the 850s.
Ain't nobody choosing to be no slaves.
Okay. Just so you guys are up to date. And the medieval feudal system, okay, that's where we're at here. So, in Sanskrit, dasa, and that's prefix, which can mean slave. Apparently, it's connected to dasu, prefix, in quotes, pre-Aryan inhabitants of India, end quotes. Gross's Dictionary, 1785, has under Negro, in quotes, a black, a Moor, figuratively used for a slave, in quotes, without regard to race. Now, remember, on another discussion and another sharing of tools of evolution, right?
Right.
And remove the subliminal blindfold of
so you see that they say, in not regards to race.
Right? I put on them as children,
But
so,
yet, they've been so easily tricked into believing the races are divided into colors and put themselves in them color categories. Did they naturally do that, or were they conditioned into them categories?
So more common
I wasn't.
English words for slave were, okay, excuse me, I'll just reiterate the fact that
we can look at the census data.
Suggested
see
that
whom,
the Negro,
is so proud to be.
Negroid, which is one of the three categories that they created. So remember, there's the Caucoid, the Mongoloid, and the Negroid, also known as later Ethiopian. And they showed that Caucoid and the Negroid are one in the same, in the sense. And that's, so go back to that video to get up to date on that. So, because then that's saying without regard to race. And that's for those that recognize that race is the difference between race is the fact whether or not one can procreate with the other race. These guys and gals,
Sexually.
we cannot procreate with them in the human
Sexually.
body. So
Get that straight. Because we can
procreate
procreate and create together, just non-sexually.
So, more common Old
called
English
platonic.
words for slave were piao, related
Animals
to
and
piauen,
humans practice
to serve,
it.
and praio, see thrall. The Slavic words for slave, Russian rab, Serbo-Croatian rob, Old Church Slavonic rabu, are from Old Slavic orbu. From the Pi, Proto-Indo-European root, orba, also source of orphan as the noun. You heard that correctly. Also the source of orphan as the noun. Remember, the word that we are on is slave. We know what orphans are, right? How dare that be a thing? That they would consider an orphan a slave? So the ground sense of which seems to be thing that changes allegiance, in the case of the slave from himself, or from itself to its master. So let's just repeat that. The ground sense of which seems to be, quote, thing that changes allegiance, in quotes, in parentheses, in the case of the slave, from itself to its master. The Slavic word is also the source of robot.
Offspring.
Remember,
moving on,
we discussed in the other video that
they are not a slave.
What is the thing that does not require oxygen?
They're
robotics, right?
Physical creators, co-creators.
Gravity, oxygen, is it one and the same? Do they work together? We don't know.
They're considered orphaned because they're without parents.
So let's go up here. So we're
the parents are still living in their bodies, and if not, they still have more spirit energy.
Slav. So let's go to C Slav first. It says Slav is the noun, late 14th century. Slave, from medieval Latin, sklavos, and that's the 800th century. From Byzantine Greek, sklavos, that's from 580. From Old Church Slavonic, Sloveninu, a Slav, probably related to Slavo, which is, in quotes, word speech, which suggests the name originally identified a member of a speech community. Compare Old Church Slavonic, Nemisi, quote, German, Nemisi, related to Nemu, in quotes, dumb, Greek heterophonos, quotes, foreign, literally, in quotes, of different voice, in Old English, P.O.D., which meant both race and language. Identical with the suffix Slav. In personal names, such as Russian Miroslav, literally, in quotes, means peaceful fame, in quotes. Mstislav is, in quotes, vengeful fame. Jaroslav, in quotes, famed for fury. Czech Bohuslav, in quotes, God's glory, in quotes. Latinized Wenceslas, in quotes, having greater glory, perhaps from the Proto-Indo-European root "plu" as a prefix, which is, in quotes, to hear, spelled slave since 1788 through 1866, and that's S-L-A-V-E, influenced by French and German slaves as an adjective from 1876. Now, let's go ahead. We're going to go back. Because remember, the original word is slave is the noun, S-L-A-V-E. So then the next hyperlink that it brings up, let's just make sure. Okay, so we don't see any of the Proto-Indo-Root actual hyperlinks. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead to Slav. We're going to go back to Slav. Because there is, remember, it says perhaps from the Pi root to here is the prefix. Now, when we go to that, Proto-Indo-European root meaning to hear, which is spelled K-L-E-U in a prefix version. It forms all or part of about, Cleon, Clio, Damocles, Hercules, Lear, list in the verb second version, which in quotes hear, hearken, in quotes, listen, loud, Mislav, Pericles, Slav, slave, Slavic, Slovene, Sophocles, Themistocles, umlaut, Wenceslas, Yugoslav. It is the hypothetical source. So remember those words 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 words all have the same root meaning, which is to hear. Remember, the original root word that we are on is the word slave as the noun. Remember what we are focusing on? Reversing their fucked up ass weak spells that they stole the information from. Right. So, it is the hypothetical source of evidence for its existence is provided by Sanskrit Surnoti, hears, Srasati, hears, obeys, Sruta, heard of, celebrated, Avestin, Srauthra, ear, Middle Persian, Strad, Middle Persian, Strad, hearing sound, Greek, Clio, hear, be called, Kleitos, heard of, celebrated, Kleos, report, rumor, fame, glory, in quotes, Cleo, make famous, Latin, plure, to hear oneself called, be spoken of, and Clutus, renowned, famous, Armenian, known,
so the stroking the egos of those looking for love outside of themselves, needing to get it from the followers, the fanatics that they've created, that don't give a fuck about what they do, what they say. Shame. That's so sad.
Here's Clunim, I hear. Clu, fame, glory. Cluada, ears. Irish, cloth. Noble, brave. Welsh, Clylas, I hear. Claude, praise, fame. Old English, high lud, loud. High last none. To listen, hear. Hello, do. Tone, June. Old High German, Pillut, sound. Gothic, Hillup, listening, attention. Okay, so, are we all up to date on that? All right. So, we're going to go back up here. Now, in hyperlinks, also Mstislav. Remember, that's the surname. So it's a Slavic masculine proper name, literally vengeful fame. From Russian, it, to take revenge. From Proto-Slavic, mistai, revenge. Mistaitai. To take revenge. From Proto-Indo-European, root meaning mitai, extended, mitai, extended form of root miai, as the prefix, remember, which is the first version of it, to change, go, move, for second element, see Slav. Now, we're going to go back, because we've already touched base on that in the other recording. So it says the Latinized version, which is the hyperlink, having greater glory, the Wenceslas.
The rapport of the other video.
Masculine proper name from medieval Latin, Venceslav. Modern Czech, Vaclav. From Old Czech, Venceslavu. Literally having greater glory from Slavic vetki as a prefix, greater, plus Slavu as the suffix, vetki Slavu, fame, glory from Proto-Indo-European roots, meaning plow as the prefix, from roots plu as the prefix to here. Okay? Again, these are all related to the word slave as the noun. So, we're going to go to the next hyperlink, which is, if you recall, in the paragraph almost to the end. More common Old English words for slave were piao, related to piawian, to serve, and praeo, to thrall. So we're going to go to thrall. Thrall as the noun, late Old English praeo, in quotes, bondman, serf, slave, in quotes. Now, bondman. Would you think of a bondman as a serf or a slave? No.
Well, they've been
of a bondman or bondwoman as
appointed as
the
alleged rescuers of the serfs and slaves being held captive.
From a Scandinavian source akin to Old Norse,
infiltrators.
Slave, servant, figuratively wretch, scoundrel, probably from Proto-Germanic Draculas, literally runner, from root thre as the prefix, to run, source also of Old High German dregil, servant, properly runner, Old English pragan, Gothic pragjan, to run, meaning condition of servitude, is from early 14th century. So, then, we go on down. Remember, the Slavic words for slave, Russian rabe, Serbo-Croatian rob, Old Church Slavonic rebu, are from Old Slavic orbu. From the Pi Proto-Indo-European root, orb, also source of orphan. So, orf, or orb, but it's orb with the prefix. So, we're going to go ahead and
remember,
orphan
that's the Proto-Indo-European root, meaning that you will not see, literally, in the words that it forms parts of. Just the sound,
and that's from 1300.
possibly.
From late Latin,
And it don't even need to, because it's the root origin of the words.
Source of Old French,
and with the original incantation of it was for.
Orphanim, Italian orfano, from Greek orphanos, in quotes, orphaned without parents, fatherless, motherless, in quotes, literally, in quotes, deprived,
non-physicalist,
in quotes, bereft,
denied the connection, the natural connection with our non-physical source energy.
As the prefix.
Through wanting to feel power over us, because we are more powerful when connected with our non-physical source energy than millions who are not. That is credited to Esther Hicks.
Harb as the prefix, quote, change allegiance. Latin orbus, bereft, Sanskrit arbaha, in quotes, weak child, in quotes. Now, so the Sanskrit word says weak child. Now, up until that point,
and that would be Siddhartha warning us,
the
warningly,
strength or weakness of the orphan, right? Until we got to the Sanskrit.
Graduated to the Vedic.
Weak child. Then we've got the Armenian orb, in quotes, orphan, Old Irish, orb, heir, heiress, Old Church Slavonic, rabu, slave, rabata,
and the facts here are this. There's obviously not just one central location of the origin of humans and or animals. Otherwise, that would be instigating the suggestion of incestual creation.
German
So,
Old Price of prison.
Makes more sense that me personally, I know for a fact, me personally, immortal spirit energy, non-physical,
suffering, trouble,
materialized, manifested into the physical realm on my own accord.
In quotes, bereft of parents, in quotes, dead of a child or young dependent person, immortal spirit
Call it
energy,
Big Bang,
whether in a human or
spontaneously
animal body,
into matter.
orphans,
Originally.
which is bereft of parents. These immortal spirit energies and animal bodies have parents just as you do, humans. And so how do you feel your parents get taken from you? How do you feel your parents get raped and kept captive or killed and then sold their flesh for others to consume? Figurative use is from late 15th century, The Little Orphan Annie, U.S. newspaper comic strip created by
Harold Gray, here
1894 through 1968. Debut Herbe, Old English Erfa, Eris, Old High German Arabix, German Arbix, Old Price of prison, Arbed, Old English Erford, hardship, suffering, trouble. As an adjective from late 15th century, remember this is the word orphan, in quotes, bereft of parents, in quotes, dead of a child or young dependent person, immortal spirit energy, whether in a human or animal body, orphans, which is bereft of parents. These immortal spirit energies and animal bodies have parents just as you do, humans. And so how do you feel your parents get taken from you? How do you feel your parents get raped and kept captive or killed and then sold their flesh for others to consume?
Like souvenirs of serial killers. Cats.
Figurative use is from late
Despicable,
15th
atrocious,
century, The Little
unacceptable
Orphan Annie,
behavior.
U.S. newspaper comic strip created by Harold Gray, 1894 through 1968. Debuted in 1924 in the New York Daily News. Earlier it was the name as Little Orphan Annie, of the character in James Whitcomb Riley's 1885 poem originally titled Elf Child. And this is an excerpt from it. Little orphaned Annies come to our house to stay, and wash the cups and saucers up, and brush the crumbs away, and shoo the chickens off the porch, and dust the hearth and sweep, and make the fire and bake the bread, and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we sit around the kitchen fire and have the mostest fun. A listen to the witch tales at Annie tells about, and the gobble-uns at U.S.U. don't watch out. Orphaned was an old corrupt form of orphan attested from 17th century. So did you all pay attention to what the fuck this fool just done said? This fucking bitch-ass individual, James Whitcomb Riley, in his poem that's dated 1885, right, titled Elf Child, referring to orphans, right, of animal and human form.
Remember, there's chickens.
As despicable individual
On the porch.
Who pity that, because that came from whatever the fuck conditioned that. And it's going to say, so we see here that the whole superiority, inferiority complex, which is man and woman made and conditioned behavior onto the human body. So he got the nerve to suggest that the orphan is the servant of the house.
When what, they were stolen children to begin with?
So,
they was orphaned by them?
Version. We're going to go to the verb version. Remember, verb commands an action of the noun. So we got orphan as the verb.
They was orphaned by their own karma exhaustion. So that they could transform into more spirit energy.
Related orphan
to evolve.
Therefore, it makes sense that by their own record here, that even calling another
even more
orphan
so
puts them, it reduces them into the state of the intended word orphan as the noun to describe another living being. And the words associated with that orphanage: robot, slave, and step as the prefix. So we're going to go to robot. If you recall, that was the last word hyperlinked onto the word slave. So we got robot as the noun. 1923, from English translation of 1920, play, an acronym, Rossum's Universal Robots R.U.R. by Karel Čapek, 1893-1938, from Czech Robotnik, forced worker, from Robota, forced labor, compulsory service, drudgery, from Roboti, to work, drudge, from an Old Czech source akin to Old Church Slavonic, Robota, servitude, from Rabu, slave, from Old Slavic as the prefix, orbu, from Proto-Indo-European roots, orba, as the prefix, passed from one status to another. The orphan. Yes, it's the orphan. Within the origin of the word robot as the noun. The Slavic word thus is a cousin to German Arbiet, as in work. Old High German Arabiet, according to Rossum. The word was popularized by Karel Čapek's play, in quotes, but was coined by his brother, Joseph, in parentheses, the two often collaborated, who used it initially in a short story. So, hope you enjoyed this information, the sharing tools of enlightenment to remove the subliminal blindfold of hypocrisy that's been put on us and been being removed, fortunately.
By we's and me's.
Namaste.
And you.
Namaste.